Dodge. Hammer, I want to get to your mock draft, Kings Beat mock draft 1.0 here in just a minute. But any beef with the All NBA teams named yesterday?
No, I mean, look, when it comes to Embiid, I mean, that's tough, but there's a better center, right? So if you're just going
Mm,
to go straight up and say that, each positional, and I know that's not what they do. There isn't, like, they don't break it up into point guard, shooting guard, small forward, that stuff. But when it comes to it, like, you're not going to put two centers on there for the most part. And
yeah.
so it happens. And, I think that's why a lot of media members don't like participating in the postseason grades, postseason like voting and stuff, even all-star voting, because we have, as media members, an ability to have someone make a bunch of money or lose a bunch of money because of these voting, mechanisms.
Man, I just so much talk about trading Siakam like all year, and he's an All NBA third team
Man.
player. Like that's
Yeah.
it just brings into full context how wild that discussion was last year of potentially moving on from Siakam. Like, no, yeah, he's really good. He's really, really good.
I take
To
him.
round this out. Yeah, exactly.
I definitely take him. There was a concern after the year after Kawhi that, he wasn't this number one that everybody thought he might be. And that's, that kind of, that was a little bit, I don't want to say a stain. That's saying too much, but that, was a little bit of a stigma like, oh, maybe we overrated this guy. But the way he's bounced back in the last 2 years, dealt with some injuries and still was able to bounce back. And now he's All NBA third team. Man, big ups to Siakam. I'm happy to see that for him, man, because they were definitely questioning him for sure.
I think we're still at the point, though, where we don't know if he's a legitimate number one. Like, I mean, he's a good player. He's, a 1-2, but I'm not sure that he's a full-fledged number one.
Who,
Um,
in your opinion, James, real quick, not to cut you off, who was the number one in Toronto this year? And I'm literally asking because I don't know. Was it Siakam? Was it Van Fleet? Was it just they didn't have a number one and they played well together? Was it more something like that?
Scotty Barnes?
Was it?
Was it
yeah,
Scotty Barnes?
I mean, that's a really good team overall, and it's a really well-coached team. I think that's something that gets lost there, what Nick Nurse has done in Toronto. I mean, he's just an exceptional coach. And they've got really good players. I mean, Gary Trent's a solid NBA. You remember we had this discussion about how many starters? I mean, they got five at least. Five legitimate NBA starters. OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, Siakam, the rookie. Like, they've got a really, really nice roster. And does it have a superstar? I wouldn't put Pascal Siakam in superstar territory, but when so many other players were, this was a year where there's plenty of guys who were injured. Kawhi Leonard's not going to make that. Dame Lillard isn't going to make the All NBA team. Paul George. Well, did Paul George make it? I don't think so, right?
No, he did not.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have a lot of problems with the list itself, but at the end of the day, I'm sure it's good food for thought.
Karl Anthony Towns, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Trae Young, Pascal Siakam. That was the third team. JoJo, Ja, Steph, KD, DeMar DeRozan. That was the second team. And then, of course, Jokic, Giannis, Luka Doncic, Devin Booker, and Jason Tatum made all NBA first team right there. And Kings Beat Mock Draft 1.0 is available out there on the kingsbeat.com. Who do you have going at 4 for the Sacramento Kings and why?
Well, okay, so I'll break it down this way. Jaden Ivey is going number 4 in the mock, but I'm doing this year, especially early on. I did a mock 0.5 where I just did the top 15. This is the first one where I did a full all 30 teams, which it came in just under 7,000 words, which not only was a bear for me, but a horrible bear for my wife who had to edit it. That was absolutely horrible for her. I just, probably took 5 hours. It's brutal to go through these things. But I'm doing what it's a consensus draft early on. I'll change a little bit here and there, like what I think will happen as we get to like the last week. But I use Brett Huff's consensus mock, which I think is spectacular. He, basically pulls all of the best big boards and mock drafts and comes out with a consensus. And I think early on it's the best way to do it because we're going to see guys move up and move down. But I also know that like a lot of that isn't pure. Like there are reasons why some guys get pushed way up high on mock drafts and then all of a sudden go like number 15. And that's because there's aging games. There's all kinds of things in play, or especially early on in the mock. Once we get close to the actual week of the draft, you're going to see much more concise and very like different mock drafts, even from some of the big guys.
So you think that there's more movement towards the end? Because I always felt like around the last week or two, people were pretty much solidified in what they did. All the talking was done early. Then if you weren't going to do anything at come the last week or so, you probably weren't going to do anything unless something blew you away on draft day. But you think it's actually the opposite from, the things that you've experienced, where it's pretty status quo early in the process. In the last 2 weeks or so, that's when deals are made and some willing and dealing happens.
I think like it's hard to explain. I think when we get closer to draft day, that's when guys who are in the industry who do mock drafts, that's the week where they really do put what they know in there, and they predict how the draft will actually go. Like I know, like maybe 4 years ago, I nailed the first 11 picks in the draft. Like that's not easy, but I had a lot of intel. Like this year, maybe I'll have good intel. But I think there's also going to be quite a bit of movement in this draft. I think number 7's up for grabs. I think number 4 is up for grabs where the Kings are at. And when, those get traded, that can definitely it can change the way that the draft works out completely. Maybe there's a team that falls in love with Shaden Sharp and moves up to number 4. Maybe it's Keegan Murray. Someone falls in love with Keegan Murray and they know they're number 6 or number 7. And the only way to get him is to get to number 4. So they can take him before someone else might take him at like number 5. So like it totally mixes up the draft if there are trades. But I think the last week is where you start really honing in on the information that you know to be true, not a bunch of fluff, not a bunch of moving guys around just to move them around, but because that's what you think is going to happen.
Is it Shaden and Keegan Murray kind of in that it appears there's a first tier of draft picks, right? With Paolo, Chet, and Jabari. Is the second tier those guys I just named, Sharp, Ivy, and Keegan Murray? Is AJ Griffin in that category? Is anybody else in that category? Or are we really zeroed in? If the Kings are selecting at 4, it's likely one of those guys.
Yeah, I would say that it's more like you're missing some tiers. So if I'm looking at, like, in all honesty, the way I would look at this particular draft is that there's, a top 2 that's clear, that we know that it's very likely that Jabari and Chet will go 1-2 in some fashion. As of right now, like a lot of intel that I'm hearing is that Jabari's going number 1. Chet could go number 2. That could change because OKC could want to move out of that position. But that's kind of where it's at right now. Then I think there's a second tier, and that second tier is one person, and that's Paolo Banchero. So I don't want to put him in the same tier as the other 2 because that's just how I break down my tiers. And then I'd say there's a third tier, and that third tier is Shaden Sharp and Jaden Ivey. And again, it's a coin flip. Whoever you like better, whoever you think will be a better player. Then we get to like this fourth tier. And in that fourth tier, you can throw Keegan Murray in there. You can throw AJ Griffin. You can throw Benedict Mathurin. You can throw some of those guys all sort of in one like 4th/5th tier. Guys like Johnny Davis have come and gone out of that tier. We're seeing some guys move up in the draft, what it looks like right now. But again, we'll have better intel in the final week as we start to really, really ramp up what's true and what's not, what's being pushed and what's actually factual. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think again, there's probably 10 tiers in the draft. And I think it's really interesting because you can look at this so many different ways. Like Sam Vesney from The Athletic, who I consider, like, him and Mike Schmitz from ESPN are number one and number two when it comes to drafts, in my opinion at this point. Like, they just have Mike does all the groundwork, and then Sam does all of the background. He basically does deep background in every single one of these guys. And Sam was asked during a podcast, like, very specifically, when you look at tiers, is there tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? Do you look at them historically as this is a tier 1 player, or do you start so you might start your tiers, but then for a guy like Vesney, he moves his tiers back to wherever he actually thinks that they fit historically. So he doesn't believe there's a tier 1 prospect in this draft. And that, to me, that's really interesting.
Kings fans are very familiar with tiers on draft day. When you go back to the 2007
All-Star Weekend, November 7th, it doesn't matter. Just tiers all year long.
Yeah. But to bring this into context, if memory serves me correctly, I remember 3 tiers of the 2017 draft. Fultz was 1. He was clearly going number 1. Lonzo was clearly going number 2. And then, whatever else happened next kind of shook out that way. And if memory serves me correctly, De'Aaron was the end of that kind of that third group of players that included Tatum and Josh Jackson. But just when you talk about tiers, you talk about Markelle Fultz was the consensus number 1 overall pick. And while I believe he's a very, very good player, Lonzo Ball was the consensus number 2 pick.
Yeah.
Neither one of those guys are Jason Tatum.
No. I mean, if you redraft that, I mean, you can even go like
Donovan Mitchell
and Bam Adebayo go back to back at like 13 and 14. I mean, John Collins goes 19. That's an exceptional
Jared Allen's
draft.
in this draft. Yeah.
So even if you look at that draft, I think we had a tier 1, we had a tier 2. Tier 2 is Lonzo. Mm-hmm. Then I think we had a tier 3 that was actually Josh Jackson and Jason Tatum. Then I would have put like Fox in tier 4 with Isaac, and there were a couple of guys like even
Dennis Smith was probably
Dennis Smith, yeah.
Oh, Dennis Smith Jr., that's right.
Yeah, he put up a 48-inch vert and stunned everybody, and it was like, holy cow. He really, like, from the jump, looked like Stephon Marbury. That, to me, who he always looked like. He's had trouble staying anywhere because that was a knock on him coming into the draft. Like, we heard a lot about it coming into the draft, that he told his teammates at NC State, hey, look, I don't want to be your friend. I want you to feed me the ball and get out of the way, because I'm only going to be here 1 year, and then I'm going to the league.
Come on, man.
and no one was like, he didn't make any friends, and he left NC State, and then now he doesn't make any friends now, and it's like, talent doesn't trump everything.
This is the truth. When you look at this particular draft, the 2022 draft, and we talk about the Kings picking at 4, a lot can happen with 4. But if they're drafted, if they keep the pick and they stay at 4, is there anybody we're missing that, could be an option? Like, it doesn't seem like AJ Griffin is an option. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's really those 3 guys, Keegan, Jaden, and Shaden.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're missing somebody. I mean, that's like, we always think, again, we believe too much in mock drafts. I think that's what I would tell you at the end of the day. We believe way too much in mock drafts, because there's always somebody that is much better liked by certain teams. I mean, we're hearing right now that like Jaden Ivey, there are some people who like him number 1, number 2 on their draft boards. They think he should be that high, and they're confused why he's not that high. So when it comes down to this, and I don't mean like mock draft people, I mean NBA franchises believe that he should be a top 1 or 2 pick in this year's draft. So it really does always come down to like the mixture of potential and everything else. Like I think AJ Griffin has a ton of potential. It's very, very untapped. It's very raw. The one thing we do know he can do is shoot the lights out. So he might be one of the best shooters in this draft, and he's certainly one of the best shooters at the top end of the draft. But you know, he has to compete against guys like Benedict Mathurin, Ben Mathurin, who I think is, probably if I were to really judge the two, I would take Mathurin over him just because
you liked Mathurin a lot during the tournament, if I remember correctly.
I did. I think he's a guy like who has a good chance to average 18 points a game or more in the NBA and like be a really, really strong number 2. Like he could average 20 points a game without any problems. But like I think he's one of those players that you almost can't, he's going to score. Like Paolo Banchero. We know he's going to score. Even like when Marvin Bagley was coming in the league, I would have drafted Luka number 2. I've said that. I said that on draft night. I said right when the pick came in, I would have drafted Luka. But Marvin Bagley should have been a 20 and 10 guy. Like you can look at his skill set, you can look at his athleticism. Everything told you he was going to be a guy who could average 20 and 10, and he could still average 20 and 10. He could go on to figure out the injury bug and start to progress as a player. I think he still has that potential. But when it comes to like Paolo Banchero, I know you're going to see that. I'm not sure that there are that many like sure bets in this year's draft. And that's why, like, again, Banchero's up there number 3. But will it impact winning? Like there are other things that go into the equation once you get up there. And I think that's where the Kings probably miss the most, that it doesn't matter what Marvin Bagley could do. He probably can't impact winning the way, well, he cannot. I won't say probably. He cannot impact winning the way that Luka does. And that's a problem. Like you missed on a guy who literally is a franchise-changing player, whether it's, averaging 30 points or it's averaging 20. It didn't matter. He was a franchise-altering player, and Bagley proved to not be that.
Is there a guy, I'm not saying somebody like Luka, but somebody that affects winning with this particular group? Like, do you think Jaden Ivey is that type of guy who, like, Keegan might be 20 and 10, but Jaden Ivey will help change your franchise?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough because Ivy, he's, for as good as he is, he's still really raw. So, I think that the top 2 guys, they're guys that really should impact winning. You can love Chet Holmgren or not, but the guy's one of the best defensive players in this draft. He averaged like 3.5 blocks a game. He can shoot the 3. He can score in the post. He can defend just about anybody. So those are players that, are going to impact the bottom line. Jabari Smith is to me, again, probably a cross between Jaren Jackson Jr. and LaMarcus Aldridge. Like he's got some nice mid-range game as well. He's got the ability to shoot the 3. He's not a great shot blocker, but I think he's a better shot blocker than he was allowed to show because he played with Walker Kessler. And Walker Kessler was just like the most dominant shot blocker that we've seen in a long time. Just absolutely crazy what he could do. But again, he took advantage of the fact that he had an elite defender next to him who could go defend the perimeter and slow guys down and keep a body on guys, and then he just picked up the blocks. So, yeah, I think that those 2 guys are really the ones that I would circle and say the best chance to be franchise-changing players that can actually win games. But I don't think either of them equate to like MVP quality player. Like they can be all-stars, but I don't think that they can be superstars, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it does. How much of Jabari being number 1, do you think shook out after the lottery? Because I feel like for a lot of the NCAA season, we were hearing about Chet. Chet's going to be the number 1 pick. Of course, Gonzaga's on this run. Gonzaga gets to the tournament. They're winning games. It's Chet Holmgren. And now all of a sudden, I feel like within the last week, it's become Jabari Smith.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is that, a specific team likes him a lot at number one, but also that has made it, from what I know, has made it pretty clear that that's going to be the selection. So he fits really well. You could see Chet Holmgren actually be a guy that fits as well in Orlando because they do love their crazy long players. They Mo Bamba, Jonathan Isaac. They just keep going out and getting these guys that are super lengthy players.
They're like the Kings with guards.
Yeah, or centers. They just keep drafting. Yeah. So, I think one of the good things is for the Kings that there are no centers and there are no point guards in the top. Well, Jalen Duren is he'll probably be the first center off the board around number 10. Mark Williams be off the board around number 15. But the first true point guard is Ty Washington, middle of the first round. He might not even go in the lottery. When can you remember a draft where there wasn't a true point guard?
Right.
It's just crazy.
Man.
Yeah,
You could have had Ty and TT together. What a missed opportunity.
Oh,
He might go to Chicago.
Ty and TT.
Ty might go to Chicago. Might happen.
I mean, if they know what's good for him, they'll do it.
James, we talked a little bit on Monday. Myself and Damien, we were talking about how we don't see it with Chet. We're not. It's blurry. We're not seeing it. We don't know what these people are talking about. And I took that conversation. And I said, you know what? Let me look at some different things with Chet. And you know what happened? I rubbed my eyes a little bit, and I was like, still a little blurry. I need glasses, but I kind of starting to see it. Starting to see a little something with Chet, but he's not. I don't think he's a slam dunk as people are making him out to be. There are concerns that I would have for anybody drafting Chet, and I almost feel like it's. I don't think it's that drastic. But part of me feels like it's feast or famine. He's either going to be really, really good, or it's just not going to work out at all. That might be a little dramatic, but I'm starting to see a little something with Chet that I wasn't seeing a few days ago, about a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think defensively, if you look around, if JaVale McGee could defend the perimeter better, that's kind of who he would be defensively. I mean, he's so long, and even around the basket, I think the reason why JaVale keeps getting contracts everywhere is because you have to defend JaVale McGee. If not, he'll shoot 90% on the season. Because he dunks everything. And you're going to see that from Chet too. He is go gadget arms. He doesn't even really need to leave the floor, and he's already dunked. And you're like, what just happened? But then he has all of these other skills that, it's a transition to the modern big man. I think, again, DeMarcus Cousins was part of the, this big change in the way big men, went about their business at the NBA level. Guys that can handle the ball, that can lead a break. And then you see sort of the different versions of it as it comes out. Embiid and Cat and Anthony Davis, all of them have this ability to handle a ball like no one had before. And I think Chet is just another version of that, except for he really does take defense seriously. And he likes to block shots, and he can stretch the floor. I think most people believe he can shoot the three much better than he has. And I think he's a 3-level scorer. I really do. He's just different, and he can pass. He's got good court vision. Some of the worries are that you have to get him involved early, or he can disappear a little bit. And I think the Kings are a team that they don't mind getting someone involved early, but he would fit in right alongside Sabonis on the front line. And then when Sabonis leaves the floor, you still got a guy. He can shift over and play the 5. When you bring him Sabonis back in, you're not having this big drop off. I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed last season, but the second Sabonis walked off the floor and you had this beautiful offense running where everyone's cutting and doing all this stuff, all of a sudden it regressed right back to this, everyone standing around watching each other thing. And it wasn't really because of Rashawn Holmes. It was because you didn't have Tyrese anymore to do all these pick and rolls with Holmes. So it's almost like all you could do was shoot the three. You couldn't get inside. They had no, like, the whole thing stopped. Well, if you add the right player here, that's not going to be a problem. Like, you can continue to run the offense through Sabonis early and then Holmgren late if they end up finding a way to get to number 2, or if some way he falls to number 4. So I definitely think, like, he's a player that he's kind of like a little unassuming. Like, he may disappear here and there, but again, it's a young player thing. And I think, again, he's shy and he's a, like, string bean for sure. But just think of what he must have, like, felt like growing up. Like, what did he look like at, like, age 8? He was probably like 5'11". Like, it's really hard because, I think his whole life he's probably been someone where people are like, oh my gosh, how tall are you? And can I push you over? Like, so I think him opposed to, like, some of the other players that are even his size in this draft, it's just different because he's so skinny.
He's tougher, though, than I thought.
Oh, yeah.
I, like Kenny, dove into watching a lot of his game film. And, yeah, he's a lot tougher than I gave him credit for what I saw from him in the NCAA tournament and the random Gonzaga games that we watched throughout the year. We'll come back. James Ham isn't going nowhere. We'll talk more about the draft. We'll talk more about the Kings. We'll talk more about these variety of players that may or may not fit with the Sacramento Kings. And, James, I want to ask you something that Kenny and I were talking about Monte McNair and the fact that he doesn't have a contract extension, what that might mean. And we'll do that when D'Lo and Casey return here with our 1320 Kings insider James Ham on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. I assume we're clear. I don't know. I can't hear you.
It's all good. Yeah, I forgot to get here. Got hot in this room.
Really? Mine's cold. Like, this room, it's the hottest room in the house and the coldest room in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So if the air's not on, I'm gonna be here looking like that meme, just sweating like crazy. If the air is on,
go full Kenny Thomas.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Me too.
The air is on by 3 o'clock, and it's it's a little chilly in here.
Yeah, some good questions in here. Like, Chet has a really high basketball IQ. NBA rigged, he does. His IQ is off the charts. He's a kid who's been known, and played basketball, like, at high levels for a long time. And I think Jaden Ivey, we get caught up in his athleticism and his, like, quick burst and all that stuff. But you forget that he's a coach's son, and that he's going to be a lot smarter than what you think he is on the court. And I think just like his athleticism, sometimes it hides in his athleticism. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Man, Casey too scared to get the LASIK, so he didn't rub that.
I'm doing the LASIK, man.
So the funny thing about that is, when you get LASIK, you're not supposed to rub your eyes for, like, a span of a certain amount of days. I don't remember how long. And I remember one day, and I was nearing the end. I don't know exactly where it was, but I was nearing the end, and I was in the shower and just washing my face. And I remember going, oh my God, I think I just rubbed my LASIK away. I just ruined it. I'm not going to be able to see again. Turned out I was okay, but I was pretty freaked out for a minute.
The paranoia.
The wife got LASIKs a while ago.
It's awesome.
But she's an attorney who stares at a computer screen all day. It's really, if you're wearing contacts, that just suffocates your eyes because your eyes can't breathe with contact lenses on. So, yeah, I highly recommend the LASIKs, although I've never had it, but the wife had such a great response. For
people watching this, you're at home, got the TV a respectable distance away. First time you're able to read that bottom line, man, that is just you could see the Kings lost without squinting. Like, you could just, I can't make out what that says. I remember the moment I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I can read that. That was the moment.
The score sometimes for me.
Yeah.
The score is just like a struggle. It's like,
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Brad Clayton, Chet is a star.
Just wanted to see Brad's avatar. That's all.
No.
Brad said there's no such thing as a true number one. That's a media made up term.
What, that true number one?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. It's best not to respond to the stuff Brad Clayton says. Just let it. Just sometimes you just let Brad talk, and we all kind of deal with it.
Yeah. I'll say that like Chet, like at a minimum, I would put him at like Andre Kirilenko. But
I saw that the other day too, and I was like, wow.
But modern day Andre Kirilenko that can handle the ball and shoot the three. Like, just think if Kirilenko could handle the ball and shoot the three. So
yeah. Andre Kirilenko, I'm not even going to say his nickname right now, but he was shifty. Like, he's a guy that moved. He's a guy that had wiggle for his size. He can move.
Well, and he was like a really, really impactful player. That's what I mean. Like, Kirilenko like led to wins. Like, all of the things that he does, guys like Sean Marion, like, they may not be perfect, but all of the things that they do lead to winning. They impact the bottom line, the only bottom line that should actually matter.
I said yes. You said we're coming back? Okay, hold on. Back here on D-Lo and KC, we got James Ham, 1320 Kings and Sutter in here. We're talking a little bit about the Kings, about the draft, everything that's going on. But all that's on pause because we're now talking about boxing. Now that Damian,
stop it. I can hear the rejoiner music. I'm perfectly capable of bringing us back from break. I just know you like doing it, and every time you do it, you launch into something about boxing.
Well, it's Tank Davis fight week.
Nope.
James, you know who Tank Davis is?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Do you know who Canelo is?
Nope.
Damn.
No, I stopped. I kind of gave up. I liked boxing. I was a boxing fan forever. But then, like, I'm not an MMA guy at all. Like, I just don't get it. I don't like watching it. If I'm at a bar, like, drinking and having food, I don't want to watch it on TV.
Yeah.
And
not
then,
my bag.
What's that?
So it's not my bag, the whole MMA thing.
Yeah. I mean, to each his own. Like, I just don't get it. So it's okay.
Boxing's just too much to deal with right now.
Yeah.
I don't know who's a champion. I don't know who's what. I just know when Kenny's really excited, I'm excited for him. And it seems like there's a fight every week that you're excited about. So
this run that they've gone through for like the last 6 weeks is absolutely one of the great moments of all time. Well, in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll take that.
The string of fights they've had the last 6-7 weeks we haven't seen nothing like this maybe ever.
Just a bunch of fights?
Big fight. Usually you got to, maybe you'll get 2 fights in a row and then there'll be nothing for about a month or so. And it has that type of, it goes in that type of cycle. This one, like I said, probably the last 6
weeks. This is why he does this. This is why he brings up boxing, because he knows if he does, we can get about 4, 5, 6 minutes out of it. We can get the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th round in here in the final hour of the show. Kenny knows what he's doing. He ain't
out to the 13th round.
You ain't fooling nobody. 13th round.
I'm trying to get us to Vegas for.
You're always trying to get us to Vegas, dude.
Versus Tank. And then, we'll be there live broadcasting from Vegas. When you're there live, you'll be like, well, got to thank Kenny.
We'll be live from Las Vegas for a fight that we'll spend 2 minutes during a commercial break talking about. That's what Rob W said. Kenny roped y'all into it. That's what he does, man. Let me ask you this question. We were talking about Monte McNair earlier. I had this realization. Now that we know this is the last year of Monte McNair's deal, he signed a 3-year deal. And that always sticks out to me because of Ty Lue and the Los Angeles Lakers, where Ty Lue just flat out told them, I'm not signing a 3-year contract. Sign me to a 4 or 5 year deal like every other coach in the league gets. I will not sign a 3-year deal. And the Lakers said, that's what we're offering. And Ty Lue said, I'm not taking it. But I can understand Ty Lue in that regard, like the difficulties of, taking that's a really short-term deal. I can't imagine the difficulties in signing that deal when you're taking over a franchise that has been as mismanaged and poorly run as this one. And just for absolutely no reason, then I have too much time on my hands. I realized Monte McNair's contract was lined up with Luke Walton's. Luke Walton's contract expires next year, at the end of this next season, as does Monte McNair's. And it just started forming all sorts of weird theories in my head that none of them probably made any sense. But is there anything was Monty really, did he believe in Luke? Did he really believe? Because there's always been the question, and maybe there always will be, whether it was Monty's decision to bring Luke Walton back. Does any of this matter, or do I just need to find a hobby?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that the first year he had to bring him back with no question, right? That was like when he got the job. It came with the sort of the little asterisk that you have to keep. I'm not sure that it didn't come with an asterisk that said you have to keep him a year or two as well. Like if it's not a complete disaster where we win 20 games, you probably got to keep him again. So they had a good relationship. Luke is easy to get along with. Like I got along with Luke really well. Overall, I mean, he's a good dude. He likes to talk basketball. And I'm sure that there were guys that he wanted. He begged them to go get, specific things. Like he needed a stretch four, and there were some things that he really wanted to get. I think when you bring up the
Luke asked for that.
Yeah. I mean, Luke was vocal, like any other coach would be. Like in the modern NBA, if you don't have a stretch four, you're in trouble. That's why the Kings are looking. They really wish they were in the top three, because all three of those guys can be looked at in some way or another as a scoring four or stretch four. Paolo Banchero is probably the worst shooter of the group, but even he can probably shoot 36% from three, especially from the corner, and that just helps space everything. I remember Dave Yeager telling me at one point that just look how different our offense looks when Anthony Tolliver's on the court versus when we don't have Anthony Tolliver, or when Nemanja Bjelica is on the court versus anyone else. And people can talk trash all they want about Bjelica and he's slow and he can't defend anybody. The fact is that when you have a guy at that position that can shoot, it changes the whole dynamic of the team. So, that's a big deal. So yeah, Luke did ask for some things, he would have preferred to have played Bjelica over Bagley to start that season, where they basically just threw Bjelica baby out with bath water, basically. But let's get back to the question at hand, which was the Monte McNair thing. I think that when you take a job, you instantly, you don't no one takes a job thinking, oh, I'm going to be here 3 months. You always think that, okay, this could be the job that I'm going to be in for a while, right? Especially when you're in the NBA and you're getting a first GM job. So he took a job that A, probably didn't pay him enough. B, that didn't have enough years on the contract. But then the other thing that he did, I'll point out, is he knew he had a 3-year deal, and he wasted the first one. He wasted not only did he have a 3-year deal, but he had a 3-year deal in COVID times where everything's compressed, and he took the job in September, and then we had the draft and free agency in a 3-day period, right afterwards. So he took a job knowing that he's almost going to throw away that first season. So you kind of took a 2-year job, and that's really strange, because that's not typically how it works. And I think he's done a good enough job. I'll keep saying this. I think he's done a good enough job to this point. You let him make a franchise altering trade that you probably should let him see this thing through for a couple more years.
Some would argue he threw away the second season too.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can make that argument completely.
You used the line earlier. You're talking about Domantas Sabonis. We used the line earlier. The Monte McNair traded Tyrese Halliburton and an 82-game season for Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I told you that in the beginning. they walked into that season with 2 guys that were standing on the outside waiting to get traded.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of those guys, they had to play. They had to play Buddy Hield. They didn't play Marvin Bagley most of the early part of the season. I think he sat like the first 15 games or something. Maybe he played for a couple of minutes in one game. But
was it the home opener? Didn't he come in the home opener?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
but then he sat forever. I mean, he really hadn't played a whole lot early in the season. And it wasn't because he was unhealthy. He was ready to play. So, yeah, I really do think that the way that he jumped into the job was strange. He took a job that was very short term by NBA standards. He didn't even jump right in that first offseason. He made some adjustments on the fly and then hoped that some of those would transition to a better sort of base around his core.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out. And then, he made the big move. So, yeah, I think maybe it changes the calculus for how he deals with this pick. We all hear that, that they're going to shop this pick hard and that the number 4 pick is available for the right deal. All of that's true. It's a prerequisite for the coaching search that whoever it was, knew that they need to get the team into the playoffs next season. So that changes everybody's thinking, and that's like a mandate from ownership that you need to get better now. And so it changes everything because you don't walk into the draft with the same mindset that you normally would, where you're going to draft a player with the highest possible ceiling at number 4. That might still be what happens, but that would be because all of the other trade scenarios and the things that they might have wanted to do really didn't work out. Because at the NBA level, you can have the greatest idea possible, and you can work it out on Trade Machine every single day, and it works. But if the other team doesn't say yes, then you don't have a deal, and you got to move on. So, and you got to, make whatever changes you have to do.
And Hector in the chat brings up a point. He says, to be fair, he tried trading Buddy in the summer, and the deal fell through. But to me, and he's right, he thought he had a trade that was locked in. Everybody thought they had a trade that was locked in. It fell through.
A good one.
A real good one. The problem after that was after it fell through, I'm not going to say he didn't try to trade him after that, but he just kind of let it be out there. Tried to trade you, didn't happen. Now come back and perform. Buddy already didn't want to be here, and the trade was messed up. He's really not going to be bought into what was going on. He wasn't going to be starting no more, all this other stuff. So that's where I get a little confused, because he tried to make a trade, didn't work, but you still just brought him back and you didn't move him at all, and you ended up getting Sabonis. So I guess it's all to be determined about how this plays out. But like Damian said, man, you wasted a year. You only had 3 years on your deal, and you wasted 2 of them.
Yeah, it probably a year and a half. Yeah, I mean, I know it wasn't intentional to waste it. I know that, again, someone brings up the Dante thing twice. They, I've made it very clear, I believe that where the Kings missed the playoffs, not this season, but the season before by 2 games, you can't convince me that if you would have just matched the offer for Bogdanovich, that you would have made the playoffs. It's like you would have made the playoffs, or at least been right there. Having a guy like Bogdanovich would have meant 2 to 3 wins at a minimum, especially when you walked into that season with 6 or 7 players. Actually, I think it was 5 players, and then Halliburton just happened to be good. And one of those 5 players was Bielitsa, and one of those five players was Corey Joseph, who didn't really fit what you're trying to do. So they walked into the season without really knowing what they had, and knowing that they didn't have much.
I need to point out Bogey played 44 games that season. Okay. And that was
out of 66.
No, I think it was 72. I think he played 44 out of 72. Last year, 82-game season, he played 63 out of 82. That's fine in Atlanta. I don't feel like that would play well here. Matching a $70 million contract, the Kings would be in more salary cap hell. They'd be even by what you just said, marginally better. Oh, I don't imagine all this love everybody has for the Atlanta version of Bogey would disappear real quick if Monte McNair had matched that contract.
Oh no, it's very possible that it would have worked out poorly, but at the same time, it would have given you the opportunity to trade Buddy Hield much earlier because you had a need, and at that point you had a need to get value for Buddy Hield, where you didn't have to. If you had Bogdanovich, you didn't have to get value. You could have changed your roster. You could have reset your roster. So it's always that thing. Like we always talk about, well, if they would have done this, well, you can't just translate right over. Like Bogdanovich played, whatever, 60-something games. What was it you said? He played 44.
44 year 44. One in a 72-game season, 63 and an 82.
Yeah, but at the same time, we don't know if Bogdanovich would have taken the bad step that, like, flared his knee out.
That's fair. That's fair.
There's so many things that you can look at. And I'll just say, like, either way, you would have had depth where that team had zero depth walking.
Well, I like Bogey. I love Bogey. If the choice was Bogey or Buddy, I would have gladly have taken Bogdanovich. Even despite the fact Buddy Hield plays 82 games every year, or pretty close to it. Like there's so much negative that comes with them. I feel like I don't know. It doesn't matter. The choice wasn't Bogey or Buddy. The choice for Monte McNair was he confident he can navigate himself out of the situation he would have been in if he had matched that deal? Because you talk about value, and I think that's an important point to bring up. The second that contract is matched by Sacramento, one of those two players doesn't have value because everyone knows that Monty needs to move one of them. Almost certainly in this situation, Buddy. And Buddy's value becomes nothing. There is no even remotely entertaining a Kyle Kuzma trade. And, he ultimately, and I guess it doesn't matter, he winds up as a piece that goes to kind of a salary filler that goes to acquire Domantas Sabonis. But you're not getting that back.
No, it's complicated, but I could make the argument that, first of all, the Lakers love Bogdanovich. If the Kings would have made that deal, they would have just matched with Bogdanovich. They had to wait. There was a couple of months they had to wait before they could trade him, but they could have traded him for Kuzma.
But we're still stuck with Buddy.
Yeah, but then you can go make the other deal to move him. I think the biggest issue that everyone has is that it was asset management. And
Sure.
you had the deal in place for DiVincenzo. The Kings should have scrambled. And I know they did. I know that they were like contemplating all the way up until like the last minute on whether they were going to match the Bogdanovich deal or not. And that's even why, you always hear this saying, well, the Kings turned down a first-round pick. Atlanta offered a first-round pick in order before they extended a qualifying the offer sheet. They extended they called the Kings and say, hey, we're going to give them an offer sheet, but before we do that, once you give them an offer sheet, no more dealing with that team. That team is dead. You cannot deal with them at all. But beforehand, they called the Kings and said, hey, we'll give you a first-round pick. Now, I'll go back and tell you that first-round pick wasn't really a first-round pick. It was an OKC pick that was like so heavily protected that it was going to become 2 second-round picks no matter what. And the second-round picks weren't even that great, if I remember correctly. They weren't high-level second-round picks. So it's complicated, and you can't really say they were offered a first-round pick. They were offered an asset to not match at all. But that's what they thought about it that whole weekend and all the way up. I think they had 4 days to match the offer. And at the end of the day, they came back and said, okay, we can't do it. Like they did the math. But again, I would have matched just so you could have traded the player later. Or you could have made other trades that made sense and helped your roster out more. And the Kings played Bogdanovich at 3 a ton. And Buddy Hield could never really play the 3. Bogdanovich, for some reason, he's long enough that you could play him at the 3. And so those guys could have played together, is kind of my point.
Is it one of these things here? Because every time I want to just, rip Monte McNair for wasting the season, in my opinion, and doing all this other stuff, waiting to trade Buddy, firing Luke, and then doing nothing else for another 40 games. I always come back to, at the end of the day, though, he got a guy that they probably weren't going to get any other way. And it cost them Tyrese Halliburton, but they got a guy that can be a part of building this franchise up and in the right direction. And that's where I always have to say, damn, might have sacrificed a year and a half, but he got us something. At least I believe he got us something. He got us something. Is that really what it comes down to? The fact that in a roundabout way, you were able to get a guy that you probably weren't going to be able to get with any of these other trades that we wanted them to make so much earlier.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, how I look at it is you traded the number 12 pick in the 2000 draft and an upside down bad contract in Buddy Hield for Domantas Sabonis. Like if you really strip it down, I mean, that's an incredible trade. And I know that Tyrese Halliburton proved out to be better than a standard number 12 overall pick, but I mean, still, you were able to get a 25-year-old two-time All-Star who plays a position of really a position of need, because the players that you had at that position before weren't going to work long term. I mean, Holmes can be a really good, he can be a starter in the league, and but he has to have a player like Halliburton, or he's not nearly as effective. And Sabonis doesn't need a Halliburton, or like he doesn't need anybody to be really, really good. Mm-hmm. The fact that you've got some other weapons, of course you need floor spacing, you need length, you need all those things around him. But every player needs that stuff as well.
Is there, Kenny and I talked about this, and the show's coming to an end. It's a dangerous question to ask. Is there a scenario where Rashawn Holmes plays for the Sacramento Kings next year?
I mean, it's the scenario that we looked at with Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. It's a scenario where you're waiting for there to be some sort of value play with him. Because if he goes into year 2 of that contract and he has a player option for year 4, but if he goes into year 2 and it doesn't go well and he's not playing major minutes, you're losing value nonstop, and you're going to have a tough time getting out of the final.
Do you think he has
$24 million?
Good value now?
Well, I mean, what's good value? I mean, I think he has. I think he has quality value. Like I think that you can.
What's quality value?
Well, again, like I've brought this up a couple of times.
Value.
Yeah.
I think Charlotte would listen for sure. Yeah. Charlotte would go, okay. I mean, I don't know if you have to take on a Plumlee, but they have the 13th and the 15th pick in the draft.
Always a Plumlee.
I think, yeah, it used to be like the traveling Plumlees. There was one on every team. But at this point, like, I look at it and I go, hey, look, there's possibilities that you could get a middle-of-the-road first-round pick for him. I think that's why the Kings are kicking the tires on a bunch of guys in the middle of the draft. They brought in 33 guys for interviews at the Combine. A lot of those guys are smack dab in the middle of the draft and and they've got to find, we talked about this before, they've got to find a Sadiq Bey, they've got to find a Herb Jones, they've got to find that player, and if that means moving back into the middle of the first round, which is where those guys usually land in the draft, I think it's pretty, that's what you're hoping for.